Hey, good afternoon, folks. This is Bill Costanzo, Livestock Guardian Dog Program Specialist with AgriLife Extension. Today we are doing our 39th Facebook Live Q&A session. We have quite a few questions today to go through, so this session might take a little bit longer than normal. I do want to thank our sponsors, Lone Star Tracking. If you're looking for any type of GPS tracking or water tank monitoring or temperature sensing or anything like that, for your livestock operation, they can definitely provide all those things. I also want to thank Spot On Fence. If you're looking for an invisible fence collar of some sort, we use Spot On Fence. I've been testing those for the last about three and a half years now. So I would highly recommend you reach out to Spot On, if you're looking for an invisible fence collar. I also like to thank the Sheep and Goat Predator Management Board for providing funding for our program through the rest of this fiscal year. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and get started. Thank you those that are logging on. Our first question is from Kenny Lively. He wants to know, can you get the pros and cons of getting a male or a female livestock guarding dog? He's planning on training to guard about 75 head of poultry over 4 acres of free range area. Well, Kenny, here's what I can tell you as far as male and female guard dogs, and I get a lot of questions about this fairly frequently. I'm in the process of doing a bunch of research for my graduate degree, and out of all the articles that I have found over the years and in the current process of doing a bunch of research, there is no scientific evidence that I've been able to find that proves that males are better than females or vice versa. I also haven't found any information that shows that fixed or intact dogs are better than one or the other either. So I know a lot of times producers claim that females stay closer to the herd and male dogs tend to be out on the perimeter more, but I haven't seen that in the projects that I've had going on personally, and I also haven't seen that in any research that I've been able to find or read. So that's what I would tell you. I would the question comes up sometimes, how come we use so many male dogs? Well, because I have a very limited program budget, and it's cheaper for us to get a male dog and get them fixed than it is for a female dog. And it's also a lot faster for the male dogs to recover and less chance of infection and things like that when they get neutered, versus a female dog. So I would encourage you to buy a reputable dog, buy a good quality dog from a reputable breeder. Go to the Texas Livestock Guardian Dog Association and go to their Facebook page, their website, and look for some dogs from a breeder that's on that website. I can tell you, Kenny, poultry is one of the most challenging animals to bond a guard dog with, and I'm not even sure if they actually bond with them or they just kind of grow to accept the birds, in their general area. But since you have a fairly small area, I would recommend, one of the close proximity breeds like a Maremma, a Crockachan, or possibly even a Commodore, for your poultry operation. So hopefully that helps you out, Kenny. If you have any other questions and you're logged on today, feel free to put those in the comments here. Our next question is from Patricia Kim. She appreciates all the work that we do, so thank you for that, Patricia. And she says she would like to know what you do with dogs when the sheep need to have medication added to their water for parasite control. Apparently the dogs need to be separated from the flock, otherwise they'll be drinking the medicated water, and that seems to be bad for the dogs. So what do you do with them? Is this standard practice? Do you build a separate pen for the dogs inside the sheep area? Are there better ways to handle this? And she says that we live in a high predator area and it seems dangerous to leave the sheep alone for that amount of time. Well, first, Patricia, thank you very much for your kind words. We appreciate somebody needing the work that we do and it working out for them when they take some advice or read some of our fact sheets or something like that. This is actually the first time, and I get a lot of questions all the time, but this is the first time that I've actually had this question ever, in the amount of time that I've been doing this job. And so, I would say that yes, you most likely need to separate your dogs from the sheep. If the vet says that the medication can be harmful to them, or the label, it probably can be. And so you definitely don't want the dogs drinking the same water that you're medicating for your livestock. The best solution, that I would recommend to you is actually, confining the sheep in as small of an area as possible, and, allowing the dogs to patrol the outside edges of that area, and that way it'll help keep the predators away for you. Um, the other thing is to look for a different possible parasite control delivery method. Whether that's drenching or an injectable or a bolus or something like that. That way, the dogs could still be there with the sheep, and the water wouldn't be an issue. I'm assuming you're referring to some sort of coccidiostat, like Corid or Amprol, and those are specifically for that parasite, and they work best for that parasite. But you might want to check with your vet and see if there's some other dewormer that might work just as well for that particular situation. The other thing that you could do is maybe withhold water from the sheep for a period of time, and then allow them to have water, keep the dogs separated for an hour or two, and then possibly put them back together and let everybody go back out to a different water source. But those would be my recommendations. So hopefully that helps you out some, Patricia. Next question is from Taylor Moore. She says that she lives on 90 acres and they have 2 guard dogs who are now 14 weeks and 20 weeks. She didn't know they needed to be bonded to flock early on, otherwise she would have waited to get the dogs. Do you know what she can expect, or do I know what she can expect with them if I wait until next spring to get sheep? We're looking at getting a few now to help bond with them, but I would like to wait. Have I ruined my chances with them bonding to sheep already? What is considered excessive barking? Well, before I get to your barking question, I guess let me answer the first one for you there. So yes, obviously your dogs definitely need to be bonded with livestock immediately. You're right at that critical window, with the 14-week dog, of that period in the dog's brain development that starts to shut down, and it's going to move on to other things that dog is going to be learning. And so that bonding window is fairly short. It's roughly from about 5 weeks to about 14, maybe 16 weeks of age. It kind of depends on which professor you talk to and which research article that you read. But I lean more towards the 5 to 14 weeks, just based on my experience with bonding and training guard dogs. So you definitely need to get them with sheep and keep them with sheep. If you wait, the chance of them becoming a good livestock guardian dog for you and staying with animals is going to be greatly diminished. If you wait until next year, to get those dogs with sheep. So even if it's just a few head, get them now as quick as you can, and get those dogs in there would be my recommendation to you. Her next question is what is considered excessive barking? So the one puppy that's 16 weeks old now, it's Great Pyrenees, she says, who can bark up to 2 straight hours in the middle of the night. She has a thermal scope. It doesn't show anything out in the fields, but I suppose she could be smelling something that she can't see. How would I prevent her from barking at what seems like nothing? Well, yes, I would say 2 straight hours is definitely excessive barking. But that kind of goes along with, having an adolescent dog or even a young puppy. They don't know, what the difference is between branches breaking, in a storm versus, a predator coming through the brush and making those, sounds as it goes through. And so they're just going to bark at everything and anything to help, try to guard their area. So, it's great that you've got that thermal scope and that you are checking. That's one issue that, that producers have a lot of times with correcting a guard dog, is they're very unsure of, well, what is out there because I can't see into the night. So any type of night vision or thermal gear like that is a great thing to have, and should be very helpful to you correcting this puppy. What I would go out and do is I would go out and reassure the pup, when she starts to bark, that, hey, everything is okay. If you've got a big spotlight, or you've got some outside lights, you might want to turn those on at that point and go out. And I know it's tough because it's in the middle of the night, but you might even have to go out and put the dog on a leash and walk it around so that it understands that there's actually nothing there that it needs to bark at. I would definitely discipline the dog if it continues after you've gone out and you've reassured it that everything is okay. At that point I would start probably yelling at the dog no, and you might even have to bring the dog inside a barn or a kennel area that it can't see out of, until the next day, and then bring it back out again. The excessive barking is a hard one because we don't have the hearing or the eyesight that a dog does. I mean, I know you have the thermal scope, but a predator might hide by the time you get out there behind something and you just can't see it. So it's a difficult one to stop a dog from, but 2 hours is definitely excessive. I would say anything over probably 30 minutes is probably excessive for you. Her last question is that she got chicks this spring and the pups seem to want to play with them. Do we have any info on bonding the dogs with poultry or chickens? One of the pups accidentally killed one a while back, but it seemed like it was just playing catch. Well, again, as I mentioned with Kenny earlier, poultry is a super difficult thing to bond and train livestock guardian dogs with. And the best method is a very slow method, because the dogs easily break, chickens. And, I definitely wouldn't have any, show quality chickens or special pet chickens or anything like that just randomly wandering around with your guard dog puppies, because they're likely going to end up dead. So the best thing to do is, get a pen inside of the poultry area for your guard dog puppy and place the puppy inside of that pen. Gradually over time, like when you go inside the pen, for instance, bring the puppy out and tether them to your side so that they're stuck with you. And, if they try to grab a bird or something like that, you're right there to scold them. And just have that puppy walk around with you. As you clean the pen, as you feed the birds, as you collect eggs, they should be stuck to your side. I would do that for about a month. Assuming you've got like an 8-week-old pup or a 16-week-old pup even. After that, I would let the dog loose, but I would still have a lead or a tether of some sort on it, just dragging on the ground. That way you can go, if the dog does try to catch something or starts to chase some of the birds, you can go grab it and correct that bad behavior right there on the spot. Again, I would do that for a month or 2 months as that puppy is growing. And try to, increase the amount of time that the puppy is out of the pen more and more. You definitely can't leave the dog inside that kind of poultry pen all day long every day, because they're going to build up a bunch of puppy energy, and so as soon as you let them out, they're going to be like little terrors, running around, chasing, barking, chewing on things. So they do need time outside of the poultry area completely. Take them on some nice long walks around the property, or just let them be outside of that general area, as much as you can. As the dogs get older, your biggest problems are going to be likely between that 8 and 18 month time period, when they start to go through adolescence. And especially since you have 2 dogs that are fairly close in age, they're going to feed off of each other's bad behavior. And so, I would definitely try to keep them as separated as possible. Maybe keep one with the sheep after they get bonded and one with the poultry for a while, for a few weeks, and maybe flip-flop them back and forth, and kind of dual train and try to acclimate them to different types of animals, since it's a little past the actual bonding stage at this point. The last thing, as you get closer towards that adulthood with the dogs, especially with the poultry, you may end up having to use an e-collar and kind of set the dog up with a bird in a pen or a couple birds, and as soon as they go over to it, shock the dog. There's some other things that I think you can do ahead of time, like I was talking about with that leash training and the tethering to you and stuff like that, and you may not have to get to that e-collar phase, but most likely at some point they're gonna mess up being a teenager, and kill a couple birds again. And so you'll most likely probably have to use an e-collar at some point to correct that bad behavior with poultry. Excuse me, folks. Our next question up is from Shannon Adamson. She says, due to predators, she locks up her goats inside a little house at night near her home. She has a marema that has full reign of the fenced area around the house to fend off any predators that may try to visit the goats. The little house is within multiple fences that the dog has access to, but she can't get inside the house and sleep with the goats. When she lets the goats out in the morning, the marema and the goats are really happy to see each other, and she's wondering, should she put them all together at night so that they can have constant contact 24/7? Or is it normal practice and acceptable to have them separate at overnight times due to the need to protect from predators? Excuse me. Is a separation from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. acceptable? She says, oh, and she did attach a little video for me, which I greatly appreciate videos, folks, when we're doing this Q&A session, because, a lot of times just a description isn't enough. So if you've got questions, those that are just logging in, feel free to attach videos on the Q&As anytime. I greatly appreciate that. So getting back to Shannon's answer, again, thank you for the video, Shannon. As I said, they're always very helpful. But I do think it's fine, that you're keeping, your marema separated from the goats. A lot of folks do night penning and shed lambing and things like that, that are other non-lethal control methods to keep predators away from injuring their livestock or killing their livestock. And so I think it's great that there's, multiple barriers to try to keep the predators away, but that your dog also has access to those as well, should a predator make it through there. So I don't think there's any issues. It sounds like, you didn't mention how old the dog was, but she looked like she was, an adult dog. So she's already bonded with them. And, it's great that, both the dog and the goats are happy to see each other in the morning. So that's a good thing. One of the things, and folks are always concerned about, damaging the bond between their livestock and their guard dog. Well, once that age time from about 5 to about 14 weeks has already passed, if the dog was with livestock during that time, and even, through the rest of puppyhood, that bond is already formed, and you're not going to damage anything by, removing them, even for, 2 or 3 months, because maybe the dog is injured, or, you've got a predator issue and you've got to set out traps and snares and M44s and things like that. There was a study done, and I don't particularly have the name of it, and I couldn't find it the other day when I was looking for it to throw in here for you, but it was done in the early 1990s, and it was done in the mountain states, and what they were looking at were some things with sheep. But a side note to that study is that they pulled the guard dogs off the sheep during the winter time, and they kenneled the dogs, and they had all the sheep in barns. And when they released the dogs back in the spring with the sheep, they actually found that the dogs stayed closer and roamed less after being kenneled and away from the stock, because they craved that bond that they have with the livestock. And so there was less issues with those dogs. So I think you'll be fine. And it looks like from the video that you have a great dog on your hands. And so, I would encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. A second question from Shannon. She'd like some advice, she said, on installing an electric fence. She's currently installing an electric fence around the home to keep predators out and to keep the marema and the goats in. But she has an outside cat that likes to hunt outside the boundaries of the fence on which the electric hot wire is going to be installed, and she wanted to know if there's any recommendations on how to allow the cat to exit the fence and hunt as usual, and return when she's done, without allowing the predators to enter or the guard dog to get out. She says that they have quite a few bobcats in the area that are smaller in size, almost as close to her cat size, and so she's concerned that if she had some sort of an opening for the cat, that these small bobcats might be able to get in as well. So I don't have a whole lot of help for you, Shannon, on this one. I don't think there's any way that you're going to be able to make some sort of a exclusion area that the cat can get through, but a predator's not going to figure out a way to get in on its own. Now, since you're leaving your guard dog out at night and she's doing a great job of guarding your animals for you, I think that's something that you could gamble on taking. I guess maybe it kind of depends on how smart your cat is. You could make some sort of a tube maybe that it has to go through with maybe like a bend in it that the cat might be small enough and easy enough to get around and then get back out and get back in. But anytime that you've got an area that isn't fully protected, you are leaving your livestock open to predation, even though you have a guard dog. So my opinion would be to maybe just get some mice or something from the pet store and let your cat hunt them inside the fenced area. I think that might be your best bet, or just feed it and not allow it to go out there and hunt outside that perimeter area that you have. Next person up, and I think they've got a few questions for me here as well. So this is from Camden Lee, or Lay. She says that they have 2 female Great Pyrenees, English Shepherd crosses that are in training since 8 weeks. Now those pups are 18 weeks with a flock of about 160 laying hens. They're in Berryville, Virginia, and the dogs seem to be very happy living with their flock. They've never attacked. However, one will occasionally chase chickens around 8 p.m. when the chickens are headed back to the coop. She says she's not worried about this yet, but should I be? It's never happened when she's around, but they've seen it on the game cameras that they have out. So since these pups are only 18 weeks, they're relatively young still, and so yes, I would be concerned about that chasing behavior happening from time to time, because it's only going to get worse and will likely lead to several dead chickens or a whole bunch of dead chickens. So I would try to correct that behavior now. It's kind of difficult to stop that at this young of an age. I really wouldn't try an e-collar at this point. I think limiting the time that the dogs are with the birds, and kind of as I mentioned earlier, having a pen in the poultry area, for instance, and having those dogs tethered to you and correcting that behavior as soon as you see it, it's starting each time, and then gradually over time allowing them to have more and more free time outside that pen, as the behavior is good and they continue to age. The second question from Camden says, how do you keep a flock or herd from entering the doghouse? They have a calf hutch on some pallets anytime the dogs aren't inside it. They feed the dogs inside the hutch, and maybe the chickens are attracted to the leftover smell of the food. He's noticed that the dogs don't want to sleep inside it anymore, and assume that it's because it's constantly covered in chicken poop. They clean it up the best they can, but inevitably, there's always some droppings. The dogs sleep on the dirt floor next to the hut most often, and wanted to know if that was okay. Well, likely at this age, those puppies are already starting to develop some of their guardian skills, and noticing things that they need to protect the livestock from, and what they don't. And so that's probably why they're outside the hutch. I mean, I know everybody makes the mistake, as a first-time guard dog owner, of making some sort of buying a dog house or making some sort of huge dog house because they know the dog's going to get big. And honestly, most of the time, the dogs don't use it. They want to be with wherever their livestock are. They want to be able to see, as much of the territory and property as they can, which is why a lot of the dogs will, lay up on top of round bales, or if there's a little hill someplace, or they'll get some sort of, higher vantage point to be able to, monitor predator issues. So I wouldn't be too concerned that the dogs aren't using the hutch anymore. If it works out to keep feeding them there, that's what I would do. An actual feeding station where the dogs have to jump inside or crawl inside might be a better situation for you, made out of some either poultry netting or some small welded wire, and that would keep a lot of the birds probably out of it, you know, from the get-go, and keep a lot of those droppings out of your feeding area for the dogs. So, you know, because most likely the only time those pups are going to go in there is, you know, during a severe storm of some sort to kind of get out of the weather. And even then, you know, if they can stay with their livestock, they'll likely do that as well. Question number 3 from Camden. His 2 girls are litter mates, he says. They've never been apart. It's very hard to separate them for leash training or perimeter walks. Is it okay and still effective to train them at the same time? Looking at kind of basic commands, the truck rides, perimeter walk, leash training, that type of thing. They've read that some dogs in this situation develop an intense attachment that can cause difficulties with training, also known as littermate syndrome, and wanted to know, do they try to separate for the training sessions? So I would say that, you know, littermate syndrome, I think, is definitely a real issue. You know, in my opinion, based on what we've seen with dogs in the bonding project that we've had going. You know, I think if you can train those pups separately, it would be helpful to them, and it would be a lot easier probably for you, you know, as well, instead of having to try to, you know, keep 2 dogs from getting tangled together, you know, during leash training. Really, the main problem, Camden, comes in during adolescence. You know, you're going to have 2 dogs that are the same age that are going to be going through, you know, those bad teenage behaviors that often crop up in livestock guardian dogs. And generally, one dog is the ringleader. You know, and it may not even be for the same behavior. You know, I've seen one pup that is generally the chasing puppy, and another puppy that is generally the chewing or the biting puppy. And so, you know, when you have those adolescent pups together, a lot of times you don't know who is causing the behavior, or who is the leader of that specific bad behavior that's going on. So I would encourage you to try to keep them separated as much as possible, especially from, you know, about 8 to 18 months of age. Once they get to be adult dogs, it's totally fine to put them back together, and there's no reason that they can't, you know, continue to work together as adult dogs. But you know, if the property being small is an issue, you know, try separating them. Give one dog more of a perimeter guarding job from time to time, and give the other puppy more of a proximity job, staying closer up to the birds, for instance. Or have one inside the poultry area and one outside the poultry area, and, you know, kind of swap them back and forth every 3 or 4 weeks so that they get used to being inside and being outside as well. And that'll kind of keep them on their toes a little bit as you're rotating those jobs, to learn something new and to go out and protect your animals in a different way. So hopefully that helps you out some, Camden. John Mazur's got the next question. He said he appreciates the detailed discussions on bonding puppies to sheep or goats that we do in these Q&A sessions. And he's had a bunch of inquiries from customers asking about running livestock guardian dogs with poultry. How would you suggest training a livestock guardian dog puppy to protect free-range poultry? Well, again, John, kind of as I had said earlier, I know you're asking about a free-range operation, but I think to start off with, you know, your best bet to keep problems from occurring is going to be to have a small area, you know, that you're going to have some birds in, and that you can put a small pen inside of for that puppy again. You know, have that weaned pup that you're going to get, or that you already have, or that your customers have, put it inside of a pen. And, you know, sometimes, and I know I haven't really mentioned pen size, but, you know, if it's just going to be the puppy and, you know, a water bowl and, you know, maybe a little small dog crate or something like that for it, it doesn't have to be very big. You know, something roughly about 10 by 10 would probably be big enough for, you know, the first month with that puppy. Now, as that puppy ages, that pen needs to gradually get bigger, and so does the area that, you know, the birds are in as well. Again, you know, as you go in and, you know, if the birds are laying at that point, you know, collecting eggs, feeding, cleaning, that type of thing, that puppy should be tethered to them. And then, again, gradually over time, you know, the tether comes off of you, it just drags, and kind of go, you know, forward with kind of the things that I've already talked about today, you know, as far as allowing that puppy some more freedom and time outside of that pen within a pen. There's a great video oh gosh, I can't think of her name, but if you go to the Texas Livestock Guardian Dogs Association's YouTube channel, there is a video from a lady that does a lot of bonding and training of guard dogs with poultry. She's out in North Carolina, and if I think of her name, I will say it here in a second, but Guard Dog Association's YouTube channel has that video, and I would recommend that you send customers to that site to watch that video. She does an excellent job of talking about how she bonds dogs with poultry and how she uses them on her operation. Next up, and Sarah Smith, by the way, I have an answer for your question, so I'll get to you here in a second. But Terry Haight is up next, and so during last month's live session, I talked about how to train guard dogs after they've killed poultry. Boy, today's a big poultry question day. They tried the recommendations that I gave, and it worked right away, and so they wanted to say thank you, and I appreciate that. I'm glad that that was helping out for you, Terry. So the question this month, both now and in the past, our male dogs have been 100% reliable around the poultry since they were at least 2.5 years old. However, for reasons unknown, our female dog still chases poultry from time to time, even though she's 4 years old now. And so Terry's wanting to know, have I heard that there's a difference between males and females in terms of controlling their predatory instincts? So, again, I'm glad that the information from last month helped you out, Terry. I haven't read anything, or at least not that I've been able to find, on differences of predatory instincts either in male or female guard dogs. Now, guard dogs aren't supposed to have prey drive instincts, but just because they're not supposed to doesn't mean that they don't. And so that could be an issue with your dog. Somewhere along the line there could have been a cross with a non-livestock guardian dog breed at some point, and most of those predatory instincts may have been bred out, but something may click in that female dog from time to time and cause her to have some sort of a little prey drive instinct. Or she could be just irritated with the birds and wants them out of her area. That's definitely something that happens as well. I see guard dogs fairly frequently. Certain breeds have a tendency to group livestock together or to push them away from a specific area because that they feel there's some sort of a threat there. So maybe see, is that a possibility? Could there be a hawk or some sort of aerial predator going overhead that you haven't noticed that the dog sees? Or hey, good afternoon, folks. Sorry we've had some storm difficulties here. Trying to get this Q&A wrapped up. I got it recorded a minute ago, and then apparently there was no sound to it. So I'm just going to kind of wrap up real quick. Trying to get Sarah Smith's question answered about Pi and Luna and them eating out of dog bowls versus eating out of a self-feeder. Sarah, my recommendation would be to definitely try to get them switched over to the self-feeder, just for your convenience, if nothing else, and allowing the dogs to eat whenever they need to. What we do at the center, with puppies that don't want to push the gate open on those self-feeders with their nose, is we prop the doors open all the way, and we leave those open for about a week, and then the next week we let it close a little bit. We find a rock or a stick to stick in the door where it's maybe halfway closed, and then eventually we close the door all the way. Sheet metal screws kind of stuck into the side propping the door open are great. You can adjust those as needed, and also if you get one of those or several of those kind of black plastic coated cow magnets, those will work really well also, and it lets you easily adjust the gap on that feeder door to allow the puppies to eventually start pushing it open, and in this instance your adult dogs to gradually start pushing that door open with their nose. Hopefully that works for you. If you have difficulty sometimes, favorite treats or high value treats that they like some wet food or peanut butter cookies or something like that, by putting those in with the feed as well, we'll encourage them to push on that gate and start using that self-feeder. So hopefully that helps you out some, Sarah. If not, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to help you as much as I can. Wrapping up here quickly today before we lose power again, I want to thank Lone Star Tracking. If you're looking for any type of GPS tracker, feel free to reach out to them. And then also Spot On Fence. If you're needing an invisible fence collar of some sort, definitely reach out to Spot On Fence and they can get you taken care of there. Also want to thank the Sheep and Goat Predator Management Board for providing funding for the program this year. Our next Q&A session will be August 7th, which is a Thursday at 3 p.m. And then also in August on the 21st at 3 p.m. we will have our next webinar on the Akbosh breed, presented by Crystal Spinrath, who's a longtime Akbosh breeder. So if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me, either Facebook or Instagram, YouTube, email, phone, whatever. I'll answer just about any way that I can. So this is Bill Costanzo, Livestock Guardian Dog Program Specialist for AgriLife Extension. Thanks everybody for watching today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. We'll see everybody on Thursday, August 7th at 3 p.m. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.